So I go to shut the car off, I have the key out, there's no key in the ignition there, and it's still running. So we'll have to go ahead and figure out what this is and get it fixed. Now if you're not aware, on these diesels there's a kill switch, and that's what I'm going to go use to shut the engine off. So if you're familiar with these old Mercedes diesel engines at all, you know that there's a fuel cutoff valve. Now what that does is you turn the key in the ignition and it cuts the fuel to the actual engine. And on this car, it is right here. So I'm gonna go ahead and remove that and then do a pump test or a vacuum test on that valve to see if the valve is working properly or if it's a leak somewhere in the air lines. Okay, so here we're looking at through the air intake manifold. You can see this valve. There's a 10mm bolt there and there. It's a little difficult to get into. I can fit a wrench down in there and get to the one on the left. I'm probably gonna have to remove this airbox to get underneath to the 10mm bolt on the right. And just holding the 10mm wrench with the box end like this, you are able to get it down there and then spin it. Again, you don't get much of a turn, but it is enough to get the bolt worked out. I'm going to work on taking off the airbox, that way I can get underneath to the other 10mm. I tried using a swivel and going at it from this direction, but this airline or whatever, this tube here, this is in the way. I really can't get around it without, you know, putting too much pressure on it. And now we have clear access to this other side of the bolt. Just using the 10mm on a 3/8 ratchet fits perfectly in here now. And it looks like it's held in by this little bracket piece. And then last but not least, obviously there's an air line. There's this air tube. You just pull that off, it slides off pretty easily. Okay, looking down in here, you can see that by removing the box, you get plenty of access. Here's that tube that I disconnected. There's where the 10mm would go, and then I disconnected the 10mm from the other side. And on the 190s, you can see here's your fuel, the kill switch. They're a bit hidden underneath this whole setup. And so what I found is easiest, and you saw it in the video earlier, I used a dowel and just stuck it through here. Instead of reaching my whole hand through all of this to reach down into here, it's just easier to find a dowel or a piece, you know, something to come in here and just hit this lever. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull this out. I know it's somewhat connected, as you can see, to that shut off, the kill switch. And there is, let's see this. There's the shut-off valve. So I'm going to go ahead and do a vacuum test on this to see if this is what's broken or if there's an air leak somewhere else. So right now we're going to go ahead and test to see if this valve is holding vacuum. And this actually goes to show how important it is to test your parts rather than just replacing them. And as you can see, as I pump, it holds. There's no issue with this valve. There's this little release here in the bottom. You can see that. So I'll do that again. I'm going to pump this up. I'll kind of hold it so you can see this piece just slid in. Now watch right there. Watch that piece as I release the pressure. Comes right back out. So I don't think there's actually anything wrong with this valve. So when I pulled the key out, the engine idled lower, but it didn't actually shut off. So I'm wondering if there's actually something wrong with my vacuum line somewhere else, and it's not. Looks like it's not actually the shut-off valve. So you may have noticed that when I was starting the car repeatedly, the engine was getting weaker and weaker. I was having a hard time to start. So what I did was, when I was at Harbor Freight, I went out and got this little battery charger, and it was about $30, so it wasn't too bad. We'll see how long it lasts. But yeah, it's just right now I have it on trickle charge mode, and you can tell that the battery was getting weak. So just quickly connected it up, plugged it in. I'm gonna let it sit for a little while and charge back up. But initially, when I first got this car, the engine would start up right away, so I could tell that I was turning it on pretty frequently just to test things, and because of that, it was starting to kill the battery. So I have everything put back together, the valve's back in, and we know that the valve is working properly. I went to shut off the car, and it still won't shut off. So that means there's probably a vacuum leak somewhere else in the lines, or my vacuum pump isn't producing enough pressure in order to pretty much charge the whole system, so to speak. So I'm gonna have to dig into this and diagnose a little bit more. But yeah, that kind of, again, goes to show the importance of having these little test kits, having that little pump tester, because had I not used that, I would have just simply ordered a new part, replaced it, turned the car on, and then I would realize that the part itself wasn't bad. So hopefully this gives you a little bit of insight onto how to replace the valve on your car. So thanks for watching, guys.